What's up guys, welcome back to the PDGA channel. That's Corbin Phillips Disc Golf, that's me. I am super excited for this week's video because what it's all about is the rules you need to know before playing your first tournament. Maybe you're thinking about jumping into a sanctioned tournament, maybe you've played one or two tournaments and you just don't feel like you have a great grasp on the rules. This is the video for you. I have two disclaimers before we jump into it though. First off is this is just a basic overview of the rules that are most likely going to come up. These are the rules that you're going to deal with the most during your round, but it is not a comprehensive overview of all the rules in disc golf. I highly encourage you to look through the rule book. You should have received one when joining the PDGA, so then you can actually know the rules of the game. That's how you play it, right? You got to know the rules to be able to play it correctly. Disclaimer number 2 is you don't need to know all the rules perfectly. Disc golfers are usually really great at being really helpful when you just have a question. You just ask, hey, can I do this? Is it appropriate to do this in this situation? Does this work here? They'll usually tell you. Your card mates will say, yeah, that totally works, or no, make sure not to do that. Just be willing to ask and they will help. So I've broken it down into kind of the 5 categories I think fit each of these different sets of rules that you need to know the most. So this first set is about equipment. First off, to be able to play in tournaments, you need to mark all of your discs. This is because you may have an identical disc to someone else on your card. And so by marking it with a unique way, whether that's your name or a drawing or your phone number or PDGA number or whatever you choose to do, by marking it, you're able to distinctly tell which disc is yours and which is your card mate's. This is able to stop confusion and make sure that you don't misplay your lie by playing from someone else's disc. To compete in these sanctioned tournaments, you must also be wearing a shirt. This kind of seems like a no-brainer, but hey, some people are a lot more relaxed when they play disc golf, and sometimes it gets really hot in the summer. But you have to be wearing a shirt in order to compete in a sanctioned tournament. Personally, I like to wear a polo for at least B tiers and higher, but it's only required if you're in an A tier or higher event. You can just wear a t-shirt for B tiers or C tiers. And the final thing with equipment is you cannot drink alcohol or smoke anything during a sanctioned tournament. This is mostly to not be a distraction to your card mates and to make sure that you are completely focused on the round. This next chunk of rules I want to talk about, rule section number 2, is order of play. When you get to your starting hole at the beginning of the tournament, you will receive a scorecard, either paper or digital, and it will have a list already set for you of what the order is. You have to go off of this order, and then following that, the order will just be who played the hole the best previously. If there is a tie on a hole, say everybody pars, then it goes to the previous hole and the previous hole before that, all the way back onto the original starting group. So if everyone pars the first hole, on the second hole, you will just start the same way you did on the first hole. Along with order of play, you will also have your order during the actual hole after you're off the tee pad. And really all it is whoever is furthest from the pin. You may be used to playing ready golf in casual rounds where it's just whoever's ready goes. That's not how we do it in tournaments. It's whoever's furthest away from the pin is the one who goes first. There are some times when this doesn't come into play. If people are tapping out their putts, then usually you can just ask and say, hey, can I tap out really quick? And usually people are fine with that. The next big thing you need to know for your tournament is how to make your stance. Off the tee pad, when you get to your drive or you get to where you're putting from, you have to be directly behind your disc in line with the basket, and it's a 20 centimeter by 30 centimeter box. For us Americans who maybe don't use centimeters very often, or it can be harder to picture what 20 by 30 centimeters may look like, it's basically a sheet of paper. So you just need to have one point of contact within this box, and then your other point of contact needs to be behind your lie. So a parallel line with your lie and the basket. So you must be behind that. If you want, you can also mark your lie. You have to use a marker disc to do this. You can't use a different disc You can't flip your disc over. You have to use a marker disc if you want to put that in front of your disc to maximize how close you are to the basket, or maybe give yourself an easier lie if your disc is on a root or something of that nature. Lastly, with your stance, if you were within 10 meters of the basket, 33 feet, you cannot step past your lie after releasing the disc, and also you have to show balance. And so when putting, you got to stay behind and you got to show that you are composed, you're not falling forward afterwards. But if you're outside of that 33 feet, then you can go past your lie when releasing the disc. The fourth rule set I want to talk about is OB and relief. On certain courses, you're going to run into OB on certain holes, and that will be mentioned in the caddy book that the tournament director sends out, or in the players meeting before the tournament starts. So make sure to pay attention to those so then you know where OB is on the course. With standard OB, you take your lie where you last entered in bounds. If there was never a point where you were in bounds, you are going to have to re-tee or go to the drop zone if that is listed. If you did enter in bounds at some point, you will go to the last point where you were in bounds, where it crosses OB, and you get to take 1 meter of relief off of that out of bounds line. What's interesting is in 2022, they changed the rule to where you can take this meter in any direction. And so you can go straight towards the basket, with the one catch being your stance needs to be in bounds. That's the whole reason for why you have the 1 meter relief, is so that you can make your stance in bounds. No part of your body can be touching out of bounds in that field of play. So that's how you deal with regular out of bounds. Dealing with hazards, however, is different. You take your lie exactly where the disc is and you just add a stroke. Both situations you add a stroke, but one you mark your lie differently. There are also certain situations where you're going to be able to get relief. Before talking about relief, I want to mention that you can move any dead and unattached objects that are behind your lie to make it so you're able to take your lie more easily. If there is a dead branch on the ground or twigs or something of that nature behind your lie where you're trying to make your stance, move those. It'll make it much more comfortable and easier to execute your shot. However, if there is a dead branch right in front of your lie or something hanging in the way of your shot in front of you, you cannot move that because that is considered in play. The only exception to this rule is if the tournament director explicitly states that part of the course is included. So maybe there's a dead log that's really big that is a big factor in some shots. They might say, hey, this is part of the course, so it cannot be moved. There are also certain situations where you can take relief, and relief is really used in two situations. One of those situations is to get away from an unsafe environment, and the other situation is to ensure that you can take a legal stance. For this first option, the tournament director should state before the tournament starts what those certain things are that you get relief from. In the example of a barbed wire fence, the tournament director should say beforehand, this gets relief, and you automatically get a meter, but the tournament director can give you additional distance as needed. A lot of times I'll see 2 meters from barbed wire fences just to ensure that the player really has enough space to work with. There may also be an unsafe condition that the tournament director didn't know about, and so he or she didn't mention beforehand. And at that point, it's really up to the card's discretion. So talk to your card mates before you do anything else. See if they're willing to let you take relief off. And if they aren't willing, but it really just isn't a safe lie to take, I would take your relief with the additional stroke. The other side of relief has to do with being able to take a legal stance. So an example of this might be you're up against the fence, or you somehow got snug inside of a tree. What you have to do in this case is you have to take a meter off whatever side of the fence you're on, or if it's an obstacle such as a tree that you could get around, you just take it directly behind the obstacle and take your stance from there. The last rule set has to do with being courteous on the course, or courtesy violations. And there are certain things you can do and cannot do. The things you cannot do include, being loud while someone is attempting to make a throw, or littering, or being distracting if you're in their field of view while they're attempting to make a throw. Those are things that you cannot do. Some things that you have to do is if someone has a lost disc, you must help find it. You have to watch everyone's throws as they're attempting to make it in order to ensure that they're following the rules, and you have to play in order. If you don't do those things, or you do the things that were mentioned previously, then those are considered courtesy violations. With courtesy violations, you must give a warning first, and then repeating that action then incurs a stroke. But I would highly encourage you to just try and talk to your cardmate first. Don't give a warning. Don't give a violation unless you really have to, because oftentimes that just escalates the situation and makes a really uncomfortable card for the rest of the round. So if you can just talk to them and figure it out peacefully before giving a warning or a violation, that's usually the better way to go. But if they do continue to do that thing, rules are the rules. So if you need to, give them a warning and then give them a stroke for the misplay, and talk to the tournament director about it afterwards. So those are the 5 rules that I think are most important when you're jumping into your first tournament. I hope they were helpful. And I was having a conversation with a guy the other day who was saying, a lot of these rules just are kind of lame and shouldn't be followed in the PDGA. And I was thinking about it, and I realized I think there's 3 main reasons for the rules that the PDGA has set forth. One is to protect players. One is to stop any player from having a competitive advantage over others. And lastly is to ensure efficiency in these tournaments. And I think if you really look closely at any of these rules, they fall into one of these categories, which I honestly think are great reasons for having rules. And so, do the right thing, follow the rules, know the rules, and have fun out there. Enjoy your first tournament, and we will see you next week for the next episode.